So recently, the National Bureau of Statistics released a report saying a staggering 82.9 million Nigerians are living in abject poverty, amounting to about 40.1% of our population. Today, we'll be focusing on the impact of COVID-19 outbreaks on the nation's economy, with our main focus on job loss, the way companies are downsizing, salary slash, the potential order of the potential new business order. Joining us now is the renowned expert, security, legal and economic expert, Dr. Charles Omole. Good morning, sir. Are you there?
Good morning.
Good to have
ladies.
you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Morning, sir.
Before we get into the economy, we just finished talking about security. We've been talking decentralization for a long time. What are your general thoughts? Do you think the government is serious about this move to decentralize police? And if they are, do you think, how soon can we? Go ahead.
Well, I support the sentiment of the Senate committee, but I don't support their recommendation.
Okay.
If you are a student of history, you will find that since 1999, we've had 3 presidential panels on policing. You know, in 2006, Obasanjo set up one. They made recommendations. Even the white paper was published of those recommendations. Nothing was done about it. In 2008, President Yar'Adua set up another presidential committee on policing, headed by Hamdi Yusuf. Again, they made the recommendations. White paper was published. Nothing was done. Then in 2008, President Jonathan set up another presidential committee on policing, headed by Pari Osanyode. Again, that one did not set up. There was no white paper produced for that one. But one thing common to all these presidential, committees are a few things. Number one, they all recommended community policing, which is just words being banded. Nothing was done about it. And the issue of decentralization, what Nigeria needs to understand is that the problem we have with the police in Nigeria is funding, governance, and architecture. Those 3 things capture the problem we have. It's not whether it is centralized or decentralized. If you look at policing model worldwide, there are effective police that are national and centralized. There are effective police that are decentralized in different parts of the world. So it's not so much of the centralization or decentralization that is a problem of the police in Nigeria. It's a problem of funding, problem of governance,
Right.
and problem of architecture.
Oh, interesting. Good.
Yeah, so we've had, on this security issue, we've had the government ban interstate movements right now because of the COVID-19. And yet, we still see young men being smuggled from all over Nigeria, circulating themselves, and they passed the borders where we're supposed to have police officials manning those places. So do you think if finally we end up with this decentralization, that it will change the effectiveness of the police? Or how do we change the effectiveness of the police right now?
Okay. Look, that's not going to change anything. In 1966, when Ironsi became the head of state, he set up an expert panel to look at police. As at that time, we had local and native police in addition to the Nigerian police force. So we had a 3-tier police system, and also the same thing with prisons at that time. And the report of that expert panel was that the native and local police were corrupt. They were being used by local politicians, and they were, all the accusations against the current Nigerian police existed in 1966.
Wow.
So eventually, when Gowon became president, he approved the recommendation, and the police, the local and native police, were merged with the Nigerian police force. The point I'm making is, those saying we should decentralize, we decentralized before. It didn't work. Now we centralized. It also didn't work. It's also not working, rather. So it tells you the issue is not whether it's centralized or decentralized. It's the way it's been set up. Nigerian police is not set up currently legally to succeed. It's been set up to fail because it has not been given the operational independence it needs. The laws enabling it has not given it the operational independence that it needs to function.
But
and
that's
as a
why.
result,
But that's why.
It doesn't matter whether it is state or federal.
Yeah, that's why the senator said there'll be a constitutional review. You heard him earlier. Then they need that constitutional review first then hopefully these issues you're raising will be addressed, correct?
Absolutely. So they're putting the cart before the horse. So you're absolutely right. The constitutional review is needed to allow the police to be operationally independent.
Right.
You know, Section 215 of the Constitution needs to be amended,
Right.
you know, to make the police not to be at the beck and call of the president or a governor, which is what would be. So when we say state police or whatever people are campaigning, you are merely replacing the puppet masters.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
We are replacing one president with 36 governors. You're going to have exactly the same problem.
Let's move on to the issue of economy, because you are a security, legal, and economic expert. So we need to ask you, COVID-19 obviously has hit a big blow to the Nigerian economy, and even the fallen oil prices globally. We're hearing companies saying they're going to lay off, they're going to downsize, they're going to start engaging in virtual meetings and all that. They're going to change the entire company structure. In your view, do you think the companies this time are putting the cart before the horse? The reason I say so is because we're having issues with crude. Quite a number of essential services are still ongoing. So the economy is not totally grounded. We're still having certain aspects still functioning. So why are companies making it look as though COVID-19 is the real issue? Is COVID-19 the real problem they are trying to downsize, or they're just using COVID-19 as an opportunity to downsize?
Well, you do have a point in the sense that, you know, COVID-19 has its peculiar problems and pressure on the Nigerian economy. But companies have always had concern about the quality of the workforce within the country. The problem I think we have in Nigeria is that we have a largely analog workforce for a digital world. So a lot of our workforce are not geared for the economy of the future. That has always been the case.
Yes.
What COVID-19 has done is it's made it more obvious now that there's a need for a complete retraining and refocus of our education and the capacity of our workforce to deal with the economy of the future. In fact, not only the private sector, I can predict that even governments going forward will shed a lot more jobs. Because where we are right now, because I remember, I think it was in the late 90s when I was part of a consortium going around different countries in Europe. As at that time, countries in Europe were introducing what we call e-government, which means how to take every government activity online. You know, and what happened in many of the countries in Europe at that time is that a lot of the government downsized in terms of volume, because now things you physically need to go to government office to do, you can do practically everything online. You know, Africa and Nigeria, of course, we are decades behind that, but that is the direction of travel. What COVID has done is to show how effective you can run your company without physically people coming to the office. Imagine saving your staff 6 hours of commute a day, and yet they were effective at home. So what that is doing is that companies are wising up and they are changing their management strategy.
Right.
Instead of managing attendance, they're now managing output or objectives.
Results.
Right.
So Nigeria is a mono economy, and everybody knows how our only major resource is being affected globally. What exactly what are our chances of, of sustaining our economy based on what we get foreign exchange on? How is the fight between Russia and Saudi Arabia going to affect an average Nigerian on the streets? Most people don't understand what is happening. It could be that, it could be COVID. What exactly is the issue in the oil sector?
Well, the challenge with the oil sector is that it's always been a volatile commodity. And, over almost 80 to 90% of Nigeria foreign exchange is earned from crude oil. So we clearly have been hit badly by that. What government really needs to do is to, refocus certain things. Now, first thing I want to say before I actually go into that is, the way out for Nigeria, the way I see it, is not for government to try and create more jobs. It's what I call entrepreneurial explosion.
Yeah.
That is what is needed to move Nigeria forward. You see, after the 1919 pandemic, the Western economy suffered a lot. And then around 1928, 1929, it led to what we call the Great Depression in America, where the economy was on the floor. But the research showed that more Americans or more millionaires were made in America during the Great Depression than at any other time in American history up until that time. And what made that happen was not government creating more jobs, was people creating jobs for themselves. So what government needs to do is to create the atmosphere for an entrepreneurial explosion in Nigeria, not creating more jobs for people to be applying for. You know, if we have an entrepreneurial explosion in Nigeria, there will be, you know, the economy will rebound. In terms of oil, well, the challenge is oil price will eventually come up. That is a fact. It's cyclical. It goes up and down. But that doesn't really help us as a country if we don't refocus our economy. And also, we need to spend wisely. What do I mean by that? You know, there's a need for reduction in the size of government in terms of recurrent expenditure. Secondly, the CBN, for example, need to conserve, you know, the little foreign exchange it has. For example, last year, I think report, if I read correctly, the CBN spent billions of dollars last year to shore up the value of naira. That is not, we don't have that money for them to spend. Let naira float in the natural
okay, I have to pause you there. I have to pause you there because that's a really controversial issue. This issue of the naira, the fact that the government keeps almost subsidizing the dollar for us.
Absolutely.
So the fear is if we allow the naira to float at the right level, many things will be extremely expensive.
Wouldn't that be devaluing the money?
That means you now devalue the naira further. Is that not going to be counterproductive?
Well, it has its pros and cons. Based on a report I got, last year, CBN spent $16.56 billion to shore up the value of naira. Think about that for a second. So you need to ask yourself, do we have those billions of dollars for them to continue? By the way, that's $16.5 billion not available for anything else that we could have used it for. So it comes both ways. You know, if you are shoring up the value of naira, you are creating an artificiality which cannot be sustainable.
Right.
So you continually use your foreign exchange earnings to artificially shore up your currency. And when you are in a situation like this where you need every penny, then you might need to reconsider.
Dr. Omole, I want you to paint a picture for us because I want Nigerians to understand what you're saying. So, for example, if they take off the subsidy on the dollar, whatever, and maybe naira becomes 1,000 naira to a dollar, just hypothetically speaking. Now, if we do that, what that can do, force us to do is number one, stop importing all these things we're importing, right? We now grow and eat locally. So the fact that we're continuing, because right now we're constantly buying stuff, we're constantly importing products to sell, that would then dissuade us from doing that, not enough need to force and look within. Is that the picture you're painting, or is there something else that we're missing here?
No. You're absolutely right. It will force us to look inward more. That's number one. Secondly, it will actually increase the foreign direct investment into Nigeria. You know, I was meeting with a group of people a couple of weeks ago over online, and we're talking about investment in Nigeria. And the number one concern they raised was the currency. Because if you bring $1 billion, let's even use $1 million into Nigeria, you convert it into local currency, even if you are getting 10% return on that investment, if by the time you want to repatriate your money, you are not sure of what the foreign exchange will be, you know, the changes in foreign exchange will have wiped up any profit you made. So if people get jittery, bring your money to Nigeria because they're never sure. Yeah. Now you have a situation, I don't know whether any Nigerian abroad will have got it now. Now our banks, it doesn't matter whether you have $1 billion naira in your account in Nigeria, you can only spend $500 abroad per month on your card, on your debit card.
Yeah.
Now, why? Because banks, the CBN is trying to conserve forex. So there are all kinds of impact it's having on the economy. We should allow the market to, to have its way. And, this is the same argument we have about subsidy, if you remember.
Right,
government subsidizing a petroleum product. Right. And we say we could have used the money for something else.
Ooh, thank you for taking us there. Geez, I need to go on a break because we'll come back to subsidy issue. Because now that crude oil prices have gone down, we're expecting that it should remove subsidy. Yes, they said it removes subsidy. But why is PPRA still determining the pricing. We'll come to that when we go on after this break. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
All right, no problem.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back. Welcome back to Your View.
Dr. Omole, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we have to wrap up, but let me just very quickly, 2 last questions. What I was going to ask was, now that the subsidy has supposed to be lifted, for whatever reason, PPPRA is still determining the price. Can they still regulate based on the fact that they've removed subsidy? That's one. And BC also had another question.
Yes, I wanted to ask, taking you back to your initial analogy, I wanted to ask, what's the way forward for salary earners who will likely be losing their jobs at this time?
Okay, so 2 questions. Go ahead.
Well, starting from the last question, if you are a salary earner and you are poised to lose your job, the first thing I would tell you to do is make sure you reskill as soon as possible. There are lots of free courses online now. You know, many universities and training colleges have thrown up, their training facilities for free online. Reskill. Make sure you become technologically sound in your skill. You know, I mean, research has shown that by 2040, 40% of the job that exists today will no longer exist. They'll be done by machines. Wow. We live in a global village where that cannot be stopped. So you need to be technologically savvy. You can't afford to be analog in a digital world. So that for me is fundamental. If you are technologically sound, together with the residual skill you have, you will always find opportunity for job. In terms of subsidy, yes, the reason I think maybe PPRA is still doing what they're doing is probably because the bulk of every crude oil, every petroleum product being sold in Nigeria has still been imported. So government intervention, some might say may be needed from there. But the hope is that when Dangote refinery comes upstream, 650,000 barrels per day will be produced locally. Okay. As a result, the need to import refined products will reduce drastically and price stability will return, as it were, to the petroleum market.
Thank you so much, sir. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. We'd love to have you back soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Be safe, ladies.
All right.
Thank you.
So we're speaking to the renowned expert, is a security expert, legal and economist, Dr. Charles Omole.